I'd just like to summarize ITA's position and the reasons why we chose to oppose tolling. First of all, who are we? ITA is an alliance of a number of associations and organizations, from car rental to retail motor industries, Consumer National Union, Pod Para Association, and tourism. And we do support the need for road infrastructure upgrade. We do support the need to have to pay for these roads, so we're not opposed to the situation of enabling infrastructure to grow to meet the growing economy and economic demands of society. We also realize and understand that there are significant socioeconomic pressures on our country and on our fiscus, and we have a juggling act and a challenge. Our objection really is to the funding mechanism that was chosen by SANRAL and the government, because it is inefficient, it is irrational, it is extremely expensive and onerous on society, and more than that, it certainly is not overall in the best interests of the citizen, and it lacked the required and the legally required consultation and public engagement processes that were needed. Our initial intention was to work with SANRAL to try and make it work, to try and find a solution, because our industry in particular was challenged heavily. Customers would be getting to the airports after going through the last gantry 2 minutes ago, needing their bills, needing the information, and we started to engage with SANRAL on how they had thought about introducing this tolling into our industry. Well, they hadn't thought about it. They had no idea of what to do. And we started asking simple questions. What is your intention? If it's to change driver behavior, if it's to deal with congestion, then you shouldn't be tolling at midnight on a Sunday and public holidays and so forth. And we realized very quickly, no, it was actually, and they've stated that subsequently, it was an intention to raise funds to pay for the roads. Well, that's great, and we've got no problem with paying for the roads. What is best for society? We asked those questions, and we quickly learned that what they were trying to do was not in the best interest of society. Certainly not when your repayment costs on just the administration is done in a tender of 8.4 billion rand over 5 years. There's more money, and that's, I'm talking outside of that. And if it's going to cost you 1.7 billion rand roughly a year, it doesn't go down, it goes up over time. And that's, we believe at best, 1.5 billion a year. But the road itself, including interest, costs 1.9 billion. Something is seriously wrong. So we wanted to test this in the courts. We were very successful in our first attempt. The interdict made it very clear that we had a clear case and for a full review. That was challenged and very lately challenged. And it was set aside with SANRAL arguing very strongly that they needed to start tolling, and they could start within 2 weeks, and they needed to because they needed the funds, and it was impacting on their credit ratings. It is now 7 months later. They still have not been able to launch tolling. We believe it's very complicated, and they're battling to launch. We concentrated here in Gauteng, and we believe that Gauteng is more than paid for its freeways. It contributes 40% of the national fiscus, 400 billion rand a year. It gets back less than 25% of that. It is funding roads, schools, and clinics and infrastructure around the country. Yet we have to pay for our roads as well through a very inefficient and cumbersome method. And we ask, where is the logic in that process?
Firstly, there's an argument that goes that the poor don't use the roads. Now that's our first fundamental objection. Firstly, it's a myth. It's not true that the poor don't use the roads. And secondly, the fact that the tolls will add costs overall particularly to business users, to the movement of goods and so on, is going to impact on consumer prices and so on, particularly in Gauteng. Half of all workers in this country, half of all employed people, earn less than 3,000 rand a month. And if you do the maths, that tells you a lot of people who earn less than 3,000 rand a month will be using those freeways because they are using their cars. And if they're using their cars in Gauteng, in all likelihood, a portion of their travel will be on the freeways. So the argument that gets thrown at us a lot of the time is Kusatu. Whose interests are you serving? You're not representing the interests of the poor. You're not representing the interests of your own members. Well, it's just simply not true. A lot of our members use private skoros because they have no other option. For the last 10 years, there has not been one single new subsidized bus route granted license to operate in this country. Not a single one. So there's no expansion of subsidized public mass transport using buses. And the taxi industry is a highly inefficient, cost inefficient system of public transport. It's not a mass system. It serves a very useful role. It's got an element of flexibility that buses and trains don't have, but it's not the answer to public transport. The expectation that there won't be resistance from the taxi industry is pie in the sky, because when the reality hits and taxi operators realize that in fact there's an obstacle and a hurdle, we know that the Department of Transport is trying to work with the taxi industry to get them into the system. The third reason that we object strongly to the tolls, and this is one that doesn't get a lot of airplay, but we've said it over and over again, and this is the fact that it's another mechanism for creating insiders and outsiders, the elite and those who have and those who don't have. The fourth reason that we object is that, in effect, it's a form of privatization through the back door. It's the creation of a whole set of contracted arrangements with private companies whose primary purpose is to make profit. And then finally, the economic argument. It simply doesn't make economic sense. Why would you want to charge people to put up systems that cost more than the road itself cost in the first place, and then charge people to recover that cost, when you've got, as Wayne correctly pointed out, a range of mechanisms easily at hand?
The state has an obligation to then look at various options of mobilizing funds or resources to be able to implement these programs. And there's various ways of doing so. Now, in all the arguments that are made, in the main, there is one burning issue. I see the others. I think there are still issues to be addressed, but there is one in the main, and that's the method of payment, as well as the associated cost thereof. It's whether, because everybody agrees we need roads, and they must be efficient roads, and they must be safe, and so on. Where we differ would be whether you use a fuel levy for that, or whether you use taxation, or whether you use user charges. I think that's the main point that's being argued. I'm not undermining others, but it appears to me that people say it's inefficient, it's expensive, and so on and so forth. So if we agree that there is a greater level of economic concentration in the province of Gauteng as compared to other provinces, and that there is better infrastructure available there as compared to others, and that Gauteng continues to pull capacity from other provinces as people migrate here, and in the main people who migrate is those with some degree of social capital. We should therefore agree that there has to be a way of sharing between Gauteng and other provinces, and more specifically on this method of raising revenue to fund, which is the tolling. I don't think we should. E-tolling is just a method really, whether you stand in the boom gate and pay, or whether you pay through other means, as we do pay-as-you-go, and those who use the pay-as-you-go. And once we talk about taxation, which is an argument that Kosatu has made, it's very dangerous, because the debate will then be, do we increase VAT? What form of taxation are we talking about? If they say, well, we tax those who are earning in particular bands, we are going back to the argument, in fact. If you made a decision that you're going to increase tax for people earning above a particular threshold, irrespective of whether or not they use highways, it then becomes problematic because, in future, there will always be a need to review on an ongoing basis how you tax the citizen. But at the same time, you don't want to then decide that, because it would be like a form of punishment of sorts, that we're going to tax you nonetheless, irrespective of everything else. The beauty of a user pay principle is that you pay as you go, as we do with the cell phones that we use. There is an issue that has been raised, which is a very valid point which government takes to heart, and that's the extent to which our public transit system, 1, is integrated, and 2, is efficient, and 3, is safe. So the issue of redistribution is very important, that we must accept as South Africans that there will be instances where some of us may have to pay more than others in the interest of helping those who are in the margins. Because if you use a national fuel levy, the very high impact on inflation, you end up taxing people who don't use these roads. If you use taxation, to use VAT, if you increase VAT, it has an impact on everybody else, even people who don't even have car.